Welcome to the virtual Malvern Festival of Innovation here in this virtual auditorium. And we're here with Roland Renshaw, the CEO of the Marketing and Technology Group, and also the CEO of VX, which is the platform we're using to render this remarkable virtual world. So, Roland, thank you for coming along and chatting with us this afternoon.
You're very welcome, Adrian.
So here we are in the virtual Malvern Festival of Innovation.
We are.
And it'd be really good to understand a bit about the technology that underpins this and also why you've gone down the route of offering these kind of virtual worlds, how that came about.
Yes, no problem. I mean, the technology and the why. So the technology, and we can talk about this in more detail, it is quite complex, but essentially it's there to make things very simple. So it's about visual navigation, it's about the places we build being online, on demand, 24/7, and also useful for live streaming. And I think it's a lot like shopping and entertainment, and we've gone online, haven't we? Yeah. To a huge extent, probably more than everybody realises. And 10 years or so ago, we looked at exhibitions and we looked at showrooms and things like that and thought, well, actually, there's no reason why this couldn't go online. And the thing that inspired us was digital twins. And I'm sure you've seen digital twins in automation and industry, and we wrote about them in terms of a good example, robots on a production line. Effectively, if you're going to build a production line with robots on it, then you will build a digital twin of it first, and you'll look at the motion of the robots and make sure they don't clash and work out an algorithm to make them work more efficiently. And we thought, right, digital twin, great idea. Why can't we have a digital twin of a physical space?
Yep. And there are obviously some advantages with going to a real event and actually meeting people, yes. But there are also advantages of having a virtual space as well, which you can visit any time. Give us some examples of what the advantages are.
I will, but I would put a caveat in there, in that a lot of the most successful digital spaces are vehicles for people.
Right.
So hopefully the visitors will go in and use the venue and they'll go into the auditorium, but they won't see avatars of us, they will see actually us.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And quite often if you have a physical space that already exists, and we've built things like Leicester University's business unit, because 70% of their students are remote.
Right.
They only go to campus once a year, and they tend to, if they've not been there before, walk around getting lost for the first 2 days. So they actually built a digital twin of that campus, and there was a very new building, very old building, but it meant that those students could go and have a look round, they could have their lectures in the same place, it looks identical. So actually it created a better sense of community, a better sense of involvement. And a lot about digital twin, and this is something the audience really kind of hangs on to. You're doing digital twin instead of the physical thing. And you're like, well, we're doing it as well.
Yeah.
It's a really good add-on. It's basically saying, I am not going to discriminate against you because you're online. You know, you might not want to travel. You might not be able to travel. You want to be afford to travel. But at the same time, the audience is so much bigger. So typically we do lots of events, we do lots of physical events, which are great, and they are great. If you have the right number of people in the room where it's convenient for them to get to, it'd be more popular. But typically you get tenfold the number of people online.
Yeah.
And this is where online really kicks in. And the idea of the digital twin is that it means that you can visit a physical space or you can visit an online space and you're not the poor cousin. Actually, it's a great experience. It looks real, it feels real. A lot of that content is on demand. And if you think about audiences nowadays, you know, is your life getting less busy?
Nope.
Have you got more time on your hands?
No.
No? Do you really want to travel everywhere to do things physically?
No.
Probably not.
No.
So it's cost. And it's convenience.
Yeah.
And if you think about any audience, so if you think, what's my total addressable audience? It'll be everybody you've got the contact details for.
Yeah.
Now, if you invite them to one place at one time for one physical meeting, then maybe 10% of them will say, hey, yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe half of them will be able to go. Not all of them will actually make it on the day. So your total addressable audience, your 100% of everybody you know, ends up being in the single digits in terms of percentage. And that's okay, and it's still valuable. But let's think about the other 90-odd% of everybody who couldn't be there on the day. And this is where this is really effective. Because of the same experience, the same touch points, the same content, everyone gets to share.
Yeah, and of course, if your addressable audience is overseas, then you've got even more chance of them visiting the virtual world than the physical one.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
And if you think about audiences as well, typically a higher value audience are going to be professional.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be really time poor, and typically they're going to be really geographically spread out.
Yeah.
I mean, we run a conference for a medical association in the US,
Mm-hmm.
and typically they would meet in Chicago once every 2 or 3 years. And it takes 4 or 5 days out of a surgeon's week to visit this conference. So it's got to be really helpful for them. And actually they said, well, we want to share this.
Yeah.
Actually, surgeons share information all the way around the world. The medical profession is almost this kind of completely different thing that's non-commercial, where they are learning from each other constantly. So what they're able to do is to share techniques, share information, share experience right the way around the globe. And their conference has gone from a few hundred people to thousands of them. And they get together more than once a year now. And literally they have a digital twin, they have a place to go, they can talk, and they can also go and see exhibitions in there, and they can see new medical devices and get stuck into your subject. But typically, if you can be there on the day, great, otherwise on demand.
That's a really good example, actually. And I think something else you've looked into is, with environment and sustainability, the carbon footprint and the advantages as well of a digital world.
Massively. I mean, what's interesting is, as a business, we've always tried to be very sustainable.
Yeah.
Now, whether you fully believe in the carbon cycle and the science behind it, there's no doubt that it's created to make us more sustainable, to clean up our act, and we have to do that. So from a sustainability point of view, the building's solar powered a lot of the time.
Yeah.
If the sun's out, we're probably solar powered now. But for us, the sustainability thing was an add-on. This was cost and convenience and useful. It makes good business sense. However, we did a conference for a company who were really pushing to do something carbon neutral.
Yeah.
And we said, well, solar powered studio, the servers are offset, our cloud CDN software is all carbon neutral. We said, well, actually, we can build you a digital twin. That'll be very, very low carbon. Invite loads of people to an event, and then let's see if they would have travelled to a physical event, because it's kind of a bit cheating putting 10,000 people through a venue who would never have gone somewhere physical. You're just, you're doing a good job, you're not saving footprint. But about half the people who went to this conference, there were about 4,000 people went in the end, said they would have travelled.
Okay.
And the nice thing about the VX platform, the software platform that supports all this, is that it does quite often recognise where you're from.
Yeah.
So we were able to survey them and say, hey, would you have travelled? Now, thankfully, there was lots of short haul and long haul flights that didn't happen.
Yes.
Unfortunately for London, there wasn't any hotel rooms booked either. But we saved 100 metric tons of carbon with one conference. So I think there's a really good argument there, particularly for really big organisations who spend a lot of time travelling and a lot of time going to conferences and big meetings, town halls, that you could put this on, and if you were going to do it physically, then even if you split it and did 50-50 and said, let's have a digital twin building that does exactly the same as yours, it services people for a multitude of different tasks, different things, 24/7, 365 days a year, then you are going to save carbon. And a really significant amount if your audience is that geographically spread out high value.
Yeah. And the other thing that you've mentioned, and I've talked to you before, is around secure conferencing, where people are visiting a conference where there's some security clearance or some confidential information is being discussed, that sort of thing. How does a platform like this help with that potentially?
That's a really interesting one. And I know it's something we've kind of helped each other out with, that if you go into a room physically full of people, you'll have had your ID checked, you'll be checked on the door, you're only allowed in if you're meant to be there, and there will be some security guards, so there's some very physical, visible security there. And you think, well, it's just for the defence industry, but it kind of isn't. Government, policing, a lot of civil stuff is sensitive information, so you do need a level of security. And the reality is, a lot of security for physical events is preventative. It's just telling you not to be careless and reminding you that you need to be careful. If you're super into espionage, then you you'll find a way.
Yeah.
So it's not that. But if we could do an equivalent of the physical presence at a large conference online, we thought, yes, there's some value in that. And we spoke to a couple of conferences who do this, and they go, yeah, that would be really good. So same clearance, the audience goes through. You've got to store somebody's data already. So it's got to be GDPR compliant and some. And then from our point of view, we're like, right, well, if we can turn that unique set of contact details into an alphanumeric key and then put a digital footprint or fingerprint actually on the browser window, and I don't think this one is, before you ask. And then
this is open for everyone.
This is open for everyone, isn't it? Low security. Then it means if somebody has that recorded over their shoulder, or they take photographs, they share it on the internet when they shouldn't have done, then they can be found because it is unique. And effectively it's a piece of software that reads that fingerprint in your browser window, and it can just go straight back to you and say, you are the security breach.
Right. Yeah.
Now knowing that you're the security breach and knowing that the software will find you and it is almost instant is one of the biggest, for us, preventative measures. That's the equivalent of having somebody dressed as having an actual security guard.
Yeah.
And you can warn people, give them advice, tell them how to be more secure. And I think that really opens up this idea of conferencing and large meetings and things like that, where online can work and it can be secure enough.
I mean, even if somebody is paying to attend a conference, you don't want other people who haven't paid getting in or having it being shared with them. So it's another application where you've got that gateway to limit.
Absolutely, and these environments can be login. And a lot of that data security isn't about, as you say, it's not a security risk as such, but there's a commercial side to it. Commercially, you don't want people in the room to share that information that's been very hard won. And they've paid to receive it, obviously. So I think there's.
And I mean, with our platform, we're in the auditorium now, and you can go outside and walk through the exhibition hall, and you'll see exhibition stands. So the way we put those together with you is to have a fairly standard exhibition stand that each of the companies has branded. But you've done a lot more work around that, haven't you? So you can actually create more complicated stands. I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about how that works and, how that works with the real world as well as in the digital world?
Sure. It's a really good question. It's probably worth mentioning that the platform we use and the methodology that we use and because this is techie, we're allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, we are.
If you imagine, say, that you're PC gaming, so computer gaming world, you've got a really powerful processor or several graphics cards in your machine with you, and that's doing the heavy lifting. That's creating the environment that you're looking at as you're going through it. Now, if you put on VR headset, obviously it's a much smaller device, it's a smaller processor. They are pretty good now, but they are still render on the fly.
Right.
So in fact, all of the objects and things that you look at are reasonably simple models with reasonably simple surfaces and really simple lighting structures. Because it has to render on the fly, it's quite demanding on the processor. So what we do is we pre-render.
Okay.
So ours is a lot more like Industrial Light and Magic or Disney or Avatar, that we create an environment, it's created very high res, and essentially what we do is we take a snapshot of it or a movie. But because we take a snapshot of very, very high resolution, and the interface with those, what we call a 360 when you're in the room, you may be in one now or you may come through one to watch us, then the reason you can move around that is that we've reprocessed the fisheye effect out of it.
I see.
So if you imagine, it's kind of halfway between film quality and the convenience of something like Google Maps, or a simplistic game, and we're in the middle.
Right.
So you're through a web browser, you've got a lot of zoom in and out, it's very fast because it's very lightweight on the browser. So it is a fixed environment, but you can move within it. So it's kind of getting that balance right between visual fidelity, as in it does look really real, it's got beautiful lighting conditions, but simple to use, and not demanding on the device that you're using to use it, because it's not having to render on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it on a mobile phone, for example. It's fine.
You can, absolutely. And I think that is, for us, that compromise between convenience
Yeah.
and the wow factor of kind of, wow, I'm actually in a world.
Mm. Mm.
Another critical thing is that when you're creating these environments, we model at right size. So
Okay.
it's exactly the same size as everything in the real world.
Mhm.
So if we take an architectural plan for a building, or you have an object, then we may get CAD designs for it, or we have to model it. And you say, well, if I'm going to model one, how big is it?
Yeah.
And you don't get the 50s sci-fi movie effect where Godzilla's 80 feet tall and then 10 feet tall and then 100 feet tall in the next shot. So
Yeah. It's all consistent. Yeah.
yeah, and its consistency is the key about, believability,
Right.
about suspending disbelief. So if every object we model is absolutely the size it would be in reality, it means there's no disparity between them.
Yeah.
And it means that the interplay between them and the environment that you're in, everything feels right because it's
Yeah.
right size. And you can only do that at scale with more processing power, not
Yeah.
game style.
And the other thing, though, is that you can take, for example, a real expo stand that's been designed for a real physical event,
Very much.
and then use that in the virtual world and vice versa. And you've done that, I think, with some companies.
Yes, I mean, we've built 3 of the world's biggest virtual exhibitions. So we have literally built thousands and thousands of exhibition stands. And you're right, there's again a balance
Yeah.
between convenience, cost, and wow factor.
Yeah.
So we've used some really nice stands that have a lot of flexibility, but they fit a pattern.
Yeah.
So they're kind of off the shelf almost. But if somebody has a stand that they say, hey, I want my stand to look just like the real thing, we can take the files that they use to design that stand, the CAD files, the actual physical graphics that are stuck to the posters and stuck to the wall. We will take those graphics and
Yeah.
apply them to the model.
Yeah.
And then that creates the thing, and effectively all of your materials, your marketing materials, your design materials, the design of your stand, gets a completely new lease of life.
Right. Right.
And
No, it's
quite
really
often we do a digital twin of a physical stand that may be at a show at the NEC or in Dusseldorf or wherever. And again, the digital twin trick, make the real thing at a show, focus attention on it, but then offer the digital twin to an online audience.
Yeah.
And again, the typical figures, you will get tenfold the number of visitors online as you will face to face.
So you're here based in Worcestershire. We're obviously
We are.
in Worcester, even though virtually we're in Malvern. But the key thing is you've got this facility here. So you've got a studio, you've got the team that does the rendering. And what are your plans to grow? I mean, where do you see the horizon with all of this?
Well, the interesting thing for us is that we manage the whole life cycle. And I think this is critical. So not only do we do from the code base upwards that supports the platform that does this, and that's been going for 10 years, and we've had all sorts of forays into VR, as we spoke about, and Meta and things like that. So from a technology point of view, we've got a big dev team.
Yep.
So we code, we produce, we test, we manage all our own hosting.
Right.
So we've moved over onto AWS recently, and we use a big cloud CDN for delivery, and all of that technology is in-house. Also, we've got a huge creative department. So we've got people making very beautiful things and 3D design, but then we've also got technical experts who produce a lot of technical content, so we can do the brochures and the actual content that you see. And the studio that we're sat in now,
Yep.
in Worcester,
Yep.
is one of the most advanced digital studios, not just in the West Midlands, but in the UK. And that means that from our point of view, we can film for real.
Yep.
We can film on green screen. We can recreate 3D environments, but critically, we can blend all of that content into something that's really usable.
Yeah.
Now, if a customer comes along and says, hey, design me a stand, build me a stand, make me a digital twin, film all my content, create it in 20 different languages, and then put it online and do a pay-per-click campaign to make sure people actually turn up,
Yeah.
the answer's yes.
Yeah. Really important.
So
yeah,
actually,
really
end-to-end's critical.
Yeah.
If you can't do just one bit of it really, really well, you've got to manage the whole thing from creation, delivery, right through to making sure the audience actually comes through the door.
That's brilliant. Well, we're out of time, so thank you ever so much, Roland. That's really good. Thank you for watching us, and you've got the opportunity now, literally, to go outside into the virtual exhibition hall, and actually you can visit the VX stand along with some of the others in hall number 1 at the moment, and we hope over time that will grow to be more than one hall. Thank you for watching.
Festival.